Mark Bauer. I'm with Napa Central here in St. Cloud. Been in the automotive industry for roughly about 35 years. Started with Chris working in a family business. My dad owned a print shop in town, and I've always had a passion for cars and was getting groomed to take over the print shop. And I just decided to start selling auto parts, and here I am. So just a passion of mine but like Chris said, cars from the mid 90s till now have absolutely changed. It's not the same car at all. Where your little brother could fix a car, now you need your technicians in the world have to have some pretty in-depth training to work on the vehicles nowadays.
And maybe even too, in the next 10 years, I think it's going to be leaps and bounds different. So kind of having the right information of the assets, like I said, can be huge for what the technology they have coming up and the stuff that they're probably going to be implementing in new vehicles. My name is Chris Warzecha. I'm with Friedrich's Auto and Truck. I'm the third generation into the company. My grandpa started it in 1954. We kind of do all kinds of different stuff, whether it's just general maintenance, oil changes, tires, alignments, schedule maintenance, cars, trucks. We do collision repair, sales. Throughout the years, we've kind of dabbled in or, gained the experience or professional expertise and be able to do a lot of different stuff. So pretty much anything and everything with cars and trucks, commercial vehicles, buses, all that stuff, we can do it. And got different family groups or family members that kind of specialize in each different division. So we kind of piloted it, and yeah, it's fun and interesting. So, but one thing I should touch on too, Mark and I are both here because of the Napa Auto Care Association. We're part of a BDG group that kind of banded together with 5 different shops. And so what we're looking for is to kind of help the community, whether it's events like this or other items that just basically show that us as a group unified together understand the importance of kind of helping the community and giving back. And we feel that if we band together with that, we can have more of a foothold or more of a presence, let's say, versus us just trying to do it by ourselves. And just getting people excited about it to understand that they can do it, understand that you can be successful, you can make a living in it. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and you can make a good living in it.
Correct.
I mean, it's not your median just, hey, I'm getting by. You can make a good living in the automotive industry.
The days of my grandpa doing it, and where he had to cut and make his own tools and rebuild this, rebuild that. I mean, the tools and technology and stuff that we have at our fingertips these days is really phenomenal. Really, it takes and makes everything more efficient. It kind of pulls into things being more complicated, but at the same token, the task of doing the job, if you really enjoy it, has taken a lot of the frustration out of it, I'd say. So.
Yeah. But to your son, I said, just let him keep going. Let him keep tearing stuff apart. He wants to know. He wants to see how things work.
He does.
That's
and that's where I go.
Yep.
I'm not that person. So how do I get him those opportunities to find out more, right?
Yeah.
And that I don't know if you could do like avenues through the school. I know that just in some brief.
Well,
it's something that we could actually entertain.
I know you can get through your school, get into robotics and stuff like that.
Robotics, and I know they have like a small engine program
Mm-hmm.
class, but other than a class or whatever, I go, okay, that's going to fuel it. But then what?
YouTube.
I can't buy it. I can't buy an engine. Go have fun.
That is true. I mean, but my background is dirt track racing, and there are so many young kids like that do come to the dirt tracks, and they come down, they walk, and they find their quote unquote hero, and they follow the racer and everything else. And sometimes those relationships get built around those people, and all of a sudden, hey, why don't you, I don't know your son's name, but why don't you come with us? Why don't you, in as long as you're comfortable with it, all of a sudden they go off on a an overnight trip to a 2-night race or whatever, and they're airing up tires and getting involved with it. So that's one way to do it when they're younger but in terms of, classes, that's about the only thing I can think of until they're, in high school or moving on, unfortunately. But yeah, just let them keep going. That's how I started. I tore my dad's lawnmower apart once, and tell you what, that was 50 years ago when I did that. So I can about imagine what I ended up. So, but here I am still standing. So, but yeah, definitely. So anyways, we're going to start off kind of basic, and you guys if you want to detour off of where we're going and have questions, feel free to ask. Both Chris and I are open to it. We just kind of got things, basic stuff, real basic. As you can see from our first slide, we're going to talk about opening the hood. And you laugh, but I've run across it. I'll ask a question: how many of you know exactly the year, make, and model of your vehicle and what the submodels are? Tiffany, you do not count. Okay, because I'll tell a quick little story here. Is when I had a lady come in, and she was sent there by her husband to pick up an oil filter and oil for her car. And I asked her what she had, and she goes, "I have a blue one." And I'm like, okay. So rolling with the punches. Well, is the car here so I can go out and identify it for you? No, I'm driving the red one. So, and I'm not saying that, but it's out there. People don't know. There's men out there that don't know what they're driving. We run across it all the time. They don't know what they're driving. So even opening the hood, there's people out there that don't know how to open the hood. So we've got kind of just a quick little easy thing to go through. And on this screen, I can't read it. I'm old. I gotta get my readers out.
All right. So basically, it kind of just walks through it. And I don't know if you guys can see it pretty decently on there, but it's kind of just locating where it's at in the vehicle. And everything can kind of vary as far as placement and stuff like that. Some will have it right in the knee area of where you kind of sit, where it'll be on the dash panel. Some of it will be on the floor by your feet, kind of towards the left down there. Everything's different. Sometimes it's labeled really nice where you can actually see it and clearly understand where it is. Some of them are kind of hidden a little bit. I think specifically Hondas and Toyotas kind of have them tucked way down on the side. Most of your General Motors ones will kind of be there with maybe like an emblem on it and stuff like that. But knowing how to do that is very important. And once you pop the hood, finding how to release the mechanism from underneath there, because there's a safety catch for kind of getting that open, is also important. And there's not, with such a universal basis of it, it's hard to kind of give like a specific, this is how this happens, this is how this happens, because everything's a little different. Being that we work on so many cars, there are different models and makes of vehicles. Sometimes I even struggle with finding where the release is, I'll be honest with you. But it's just a matter of kind of just feeling it out a little bit. Since it's not like hands-on training, it's hard to get any more in depth than that, I guess, is the best way to say it. One thing to kind of piggyback on what Mark talked about, knowing your make and model of the vehicle, the one thing that I can say as a shop, and maybe Tiffany, you can kind of speak on this too with you kind of going, or with what you do. When you call in or have questions on your vehicle, knowing where your VIN number and stuff is, that is very critical, because make, submodel, all that stuff has kind of changed or kind of moved now with having the VIN number. Because what we do with electronics or the systems we have to kind of decode the VIN, if you can give or supply that information, that usually gives us a direct interchange to everything that is on your car. So a lot of the times, and I don't know if anyone here has ever experienced it, where you're calling in, you have an issue with your vehicle, and then they're like, can I get the VIN number of your car? And as I've transitioned or kind of experienced, throughout the years, where that was such a foreign thing to ask people, to now more people are kind of, they understand what it is, but it is truly important if you're looking for accurate information, accurate parts. There's a lot of different things that kind of go off of that. And I said, again, it's like a blueprint. And it's kind of simplified, because with the way things are now, once you can just read off the numbers, it's like, then they can take and run with it.
And to add to that, the VIN number is a 16, 17 digit number that's on your car in several different places. But every shop that I'm pretty much tied to has a license plate decoder. So if if you're calling into a shop or even into Napa or another auto parts store, and if you have your license plate, we can decode the VIN. So you just need to know your license plate number, and we can figure out everything for you that way too.
As long as it's legal.
Yeah.
As long as it's registered, yes. Yes. Your tabs are expired, we have
ran
problems.
that a couple times. Yeah.
Yes.
It's rare.
It goes off the
Yeah.
DMV, so that's how that plate decoding works. So.
Yep. Talking about fluids, we have so many fluids in a vehicle, but you guys can maintain your fluids from oil, coolant, lubricating qualities, sealing qualities, even just with different greases and stuff like that. But most of the time, the car owner can take care of that themselves. And if you keep a close eye on most of this stuff, you'll save yourself money in a long time by preventive maintenance. Getting back to opening up the hood, this is a typical of what a vehicle looks like and the different locations. And given this is one car, it kind of looks like it's a Ford Fusion or Ford Taurus. I think it's a Ford just by the headlights is what it looks like. But everything's in different locations, but there's pretty much universal signs for the washer fluid, oil, transmission. Everything's pretty labeled under there.
Yeah, it's a lot of times if you have any questions, the actual pictures and the insignias of a lot of this stuff should be in your owner's manual, which again, it's a lot of the stuff to generically speak on it. Every car is going to have a little different variety of it. Some transmissions, you cannot check the fluid with a dipstick, but most of them are going to be there. And the key thing of checking your fluids and stuff like that, which primarily the biggest one that I'd say is going to be like your engine oil, your engine coolant. Those are the two big hitters, that usually have carry a lot of weight, so to say, in preventive maintenance, especially with new vehicles. I believe, when did it start? In 05 or 06, when the EPA or the federal fuel regulations came in, and then they went to variable valve timing and stuff.
Yes.
So since that started, a lot of these newer cars went to a variable valve timing, which is a different operating system on the old school style of motors. They're trying to run it so efficiently where then they're running different viscosities and weights of oil, and a lot of them burn oil a lot, especially in that year class from 07 up to 010, 12,
12.
Right up to there.
Yeah.
A lot of them had a lot of issues. During that time frame, it was actually kind of ironic where a lot of people would trade in older cars, and their newer cars burned more oil than their older ones. And again, that's simple measures to prevent from blowing your motor up. Big costs, stuff like that. So adding a quart of oil here and there can save you literally thousands of dollars. A lot of the things we see too, low oil can lead to like rattling conditions, certain other things on cold starts where just that simple stuff can be a big deal. Engine coolant's another one, because in our Minnesota climate, it's very common that you can get leaks. Coolant leaks can occur in all kinds of different scenarios, but making sure that it's up to level and stuff like that is huge. And we'll probably touch base on that a little bit more in depth later.
Like I said, we're kind of keeping this simple. Start off with washer fluid. How many of you know that there's different types of washer fluid for different freeze ratings? And you ever had the slushy washer fluid come out of your? So coming into winter, make sure that you've got a good one that's to -20, -40, and not the summertime stuff. Burn it through, and it'll save you a headache down the road going into winter. Like we were talking about engine oil, looking at your engine oil dipstick and pulling it out and cleaning it off and putting it back in, pulling it back out and reading how much oil you have. That second graph down below kind of shows you what a dipstick looks like. There is a range in there that says it's good, full, or at a quart. And like Chris was saying, with the newer vehicles burning oil, it's just the way they're designed. They burn oil. And it's unfortunate, but that's the design. They've designed them to burn oil. And if you stay on top of it, it's gonna save you in the long run also.
Well, yeah.
So if you're with that burning oil situation, if you think about it, an oil change on average is 3,000 to 5,000 miles on an interval, right? They play to come back 3,000 to 5,000 miles. A lot of specs for newer cars, after you hit 50, 60, 70,000 miles on mileage for your vehicle, you can burn a whole quart every 1,500 miles, and it's considered within range. So if you're going 3,000 or 5,000 miles, you can expect to burn 2 or 3 quarts, and the manufacturer will say that's okay. So I've heard GM say that all day long, even 750 miles on some vehicles.
Yeah, and a lot of them say it, I think, is just kind of skate around the problem
Right.
at hand.
But for perspective,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going 5,000 miles and you're down 2 or 3 quarts, and your engine only holds 4 or 5.
And that's kind of touching to the point of where you can cause a lot of issues by not checking it.
So how often do you recommend that we check our oil?
It depends. So the best thing, or my recommendation would be, is kind of getting a feel for what your vehicle does. As you drive it more and more and more, you can kind of get kind of a map, so to say, and then understand it, right? But if it's a new vehicle to you, whether it's brand new or even used, brand new or used, there's only the 2 options, but
New to you.
so what I like to do is kind of recommend like a little bit of a ledger, so to say, or sometimes I tell customers, put a piece of tape somewhere in the vehicle where it's not going to get lost, because pieces of paper tend to migrate, right? You can take and write down, check it, let's say every other gas tank, fueling, every other time you fuel up. So when you do that, the thing that I always recommend is that you fill it up to the same level again. So you're not compromising running it low. Plus, you also then can keep track of how much you've added. So then you can kind of get a game plan. So after you go through an oil change or 2, you can get a comprehensive rating to say, like, all right, I drove 10,000 miles. I added this much oil. Kind of gives you a feel for what your vehicle's doing. It still doesn't hurt to check it every once in a while after that, but then you can get like a consumption rate, is what I would call it. And sometimes even with some of these vehicles from, years of old, you'd also kind of be able to pin it down to say, like, okay, we burned a lot more oil during this instance, but I was actually driving a lot of highway miles, or I was actually driving a lot of city miles. So then you can kind of pinpoint it down to when it's going to burn most of it on what kind of function you're using of it, which is the engine isn't necessarily running differently, but when you're getting a lot of accelerating, or just kind of cruising down the highway, there's some variables that can kind of play a factor with that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Biggest thing to look for on, is what the quality of oil you have in. Is it dirty? Is it really black? Is it tarry? That is a good indicator that you need to get an oil change sooner than later. And, like we were talking about, just reading your dipstick and knowing what your consumption rate is over a period of time.
Yeah, the other thing I'd kind of touch on, because I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but when you do check your engine oil, you want to check it at operating temperature. So you want to make sure you start it, run it for a little bit. Some vehicles, and this is where you might have to look into the owner's manual. Some of it you have to leave sit for just a little bit so it can kind of drain back down. Some of it will stay on the upper side. But then when you then go through and check it, you're getting an accurate reading.
This is a slide that I put in with ATF, or automatic transmission fluid, because 99.9% of the vehicles out there nowadays are automatics. However, here in the past, about 10 years, that they've come to sealed transmissions. So there is no transmission dipstick anymore. It's sealed, basically unserviceable. We just drive it until it doesn't go, and you throw a new one in. That's just how the industry has gone about doing that. But the transmission can be checked basically the same way as you do your oil, except that they ask that the engine be at temperature again and should be running while you check it. And that's going to tell you but there again, color, smell, if it smells burnt, if you're having issues with the vehicle slipping or just acting funny when you're pushing the accelerator on, check your dipstick. See if your fluid is low. If it's low, add a little bit, doesn't hurt, and see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, then get in touch with your local shop.
Something to this point, some of this stuff, maybe checking tranny fluid might be a little intimidating if you don't have a high comfort level with it. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I would be very specific on too, and I should have touched on it too prior, but there's so many different engine oils these days where you want to check the actual viscosity and what the vehicle calls for. One thing that we focus on at our shop specifically is that we're looking at the specific specifications on an OE pour for what they recommend. There's other variants where you can look at just like your 530 or 1030. They got just so many oils. I think back in the day when my grandpa started, there was probably 2 oils. Now we stock 35. It has just gotten a little wild with it. And there's a lot of like in-depth stuff that they have, from European oils to standard SAE oils and stuff like that. Again, your owner's manuals will be your best friend. In reality, and I kind of joked about this earlier with like YouTube, but really the internet does have a lot of stuff on it. The thing to be
Good
careful.
and bad.
Yes. Yep. But the thing, when it comes down to it, if you're in a pinch, I mean, you can usually kind of decipher out to figure it out, and then picking the right stuff. Transmission fluid is very, very important too. They have a lot of universal fluids specifically for transmissions. So some of the stuff is designed specifically for one specific transmission or class of transmissions, where some of the other ones have more of a global universal fitment to it. Some transmissions actually only have 1 or 2 fluids that will work. And a lot of it's just based on the friction modifiers and stuff in the actual fluid, what it's going to do when it's inside the transmission, because putting the wrong fluid in can be very detrimental too. So that's just a warning that I'd like to put out there. Like, always kind of make sure you're studying up or asking the questions, where whether you have a friend or even if you talk to the shop that you choose to work with. I know myself specifically, when customers come in, I like to try to educate them on everything I can. Just getting the comfort level to check it and to understand what's what. I myself, even if I've been busy, have found time to walk outside. I've showed kids how to check oil. I've showed kids how to check tire pressures. If it takes 5 minutes, it's worth my time. I think that's a big service that most people, if they learn how to do it, can really appreciate that.
Well, talking about the multiple different viscosities of oil, we go into antifreeze or coolant, which is about the same realm. I mean, we've got every color of the rainbow out there right now for coolants, depending on what kind of vehicle you run. And color sometimes is not the thing to go by either. It's the specs of the coolant for your vehicle. There is a universal coolant out there that mixes pretty much with anything and everything that will cover you. But like I said, there's green, yellow, orange, pink, blue, you name it, it's out there in terms of colors.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So for your coolant, should you match the color? Or are you saying look at the ingredients, or
there's always a spec on the back of the bottle. There's a spec, and your owner's manual will tell you the exact spec that you need to look at. And coolants, just like oils and transmission fluids, they're all backwards compatible. So let's say your coolant is a GC6. Okay. Well, the bottle that you bought is the same color same color, but it's GC7, and in your owner's manual says GC6. Well, the 7 is going to work with the 6. You just don't want to have it the other way around, where it says 7 in your owner's manual, and then you put 6 in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So everything is pretty much backwards compatible. As they continue to add and modify these chemicals, they still cover everything going up to that point and then to the new stuff, so it covers. And then the other thing to make sure that when you're dealing with coolant is that it is a 50-50 mix. Most coolants out there, you can buy it right off the shelf, 50-50 mixed. And that's personally my best way of going with it, because it's distilled water. You don't put any extra minerals or contaminants into your system. So they do come pre-mixed, but you don't want to put a concentrated unmixed, because then you're gonna change the boiling point and everything else with the chemical mix-up of the coolant. It is designed for a 50-50 mix.
A lot of the thing with the colors on engine coolant as well. So a lot of the universal coolants, if you've ever been in the store and you see it all makes all models, is probably the common verbiage that you're going to see. That stuff is made to actually acclimate to the color in your car. So if you see it, it's like a bright yellow. It doesn't necessarily mean that it won't mix with that, because all makes all models usually covers 90% of the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there's some very rare, I think just the ones off the top of my head, Rams with the OET technology, and then there's some imports that kind of follow suit. with some of that stuff. And a lot of what the coolants actually are going to be geared towards are more of the ingredients in there. So with the old school coolants, when they only had a couple different styles, a lot of them actually only had cast iron or steel heads, where then a lot of the coolant that went through there wasn't going to do any damage to the metallics and stuff in there. Now with the aluminum blocks or the aluminum cylinder heads or the different metals inside of your engine, if you put the wrong coolant in there, it actually pits certain things up. It'll actually start to cause issues where it can kind of wear, get corroded, kind of oxidization or whatever is the right terminology for it. But that's what it's looking at. Not necessarily that it's going to be immediate damage to your vehicle, but it's something that over time, that's when that can start to present itself. Again, with anything, it's always important to check and try to follow suit with the right stuff, but it's not necessarily going to be geared towards just a color. Because some of the universals that most shops use and stuff like that is going to be like a really bright yellow. I've seen them where they're also kind of a light pink. But most of your General Motor vehicles are going to run Dex Cool. And a lot of them are going to be very similar to that. I think the Hondas are going to be like a dark blue. Mercedes, I think, are dark blue as well.
Yep. Volkswagen is a like a pink, and they have a blue.
Yep.
So it's like I said, it's the colors of the rainbow. It really is. And your owner's manual is going to be your best guide on that.
The hardest part, I think, just thinking if like I was going to walk into the situation not knowing anything, is when you walk into like a gas station and then you see that roll of coolant and it's like you're standing there and you have no idea what you're looking at, right? So that'd be intimidating. But if you're going into like a parts store or anything to buy coolant, a lot of times if you ask the right questions, they're going to have people that know what they're talking about, or at least will ask the right people to point you in the right direction. And it can be helpful, and again, at the gas station, you're kind of on your own, but when you go into a parts store, it'll probably give you that peace of mind as far as what to get.
Yeah, our computers, once we have know your make, model, engine, and we look up coolant, it tells us which coolant you need. It's not going to tell us, it gives you 20 different coolants. It's going to say you can have the Xerox brand, you can have the Napa brand, or you can have this brand. So you have your options that way, and that's this price point. But it's not going to lead you the wrong way at a parts store, anyways. Checking fluids. When it comes to your coolant, never check it when it's hot. You will get seriously burnt and hurt. And so if you overheat on the side of the road, let your car sit. Let it cool off before you open up any caps, because that's everything in there is under pressure. And even if your system takes 4 gallons and you only got 2 gallons, it's still under pressure. And as soon as you pop that cap, it's going to make a geyser and it's coming out at you. So if you take anything away from this today, never open a hot radiator or a coolant reservoir cap. But that's where you check it. It's just, but do it under a cool situation. Your overflow tanks will have 2 marks on it, hot on the top, cool on the bottom, and you'll as long as your coolant level is in between those 2 marks, you're good to go. If you don't have a coolant reservoir, you can't see it, because some vehicles have it so tucked away that you can't see it, and your radiator cap is visible, open the radiator cap, make sure you have it to the full extent. But there again, that's something that you should probably, doesn't need to be done on a regular basis, but if you're concerned about it or have a leak and see a leak, you can check it and try and do some self-diagnosing before you bring it in.
Yeah, and to kind of touch point on that, cooling systems are pressurized. They usually are going to pressure up as they heat up. So checking a cooling system at operating temperature is always recommended. You're still going to probably get some coolant that'll leak out over the reservoir cap, or not necessarily the reservoir cap, but like your radiator itself. They usually have a little spout on top that you can pull off. Some systems will have a pressure tank. So again, with different makes and models and stuff, it can vary. I've witnessed probably 5 customers in my career that have gotten seriously burned, and it is a real thing. It doesn't sound like it should shoot out of there, but I've had a couple people that come up taped up, 3rd-degree burns on their hands. Because if you think about it, your engine coolant at that time when it's bubbling or overheating can be well north of 250 degrees. So it's definitely something not to play games with. Not to be scared about it though either. Like it's just something that, and it's not something to intimidate you, like you can't check it, but just to think it through. Checking at a cool temperature makes sense. There are some things for like bleeding the systems out. Some of them will get air pockets where then they can still kind of gush out. And then at that point, you probably need to get to a shop because some of it does take now special tools to basically put negative vacuum on there and suck the air out of there. Because with the cooled systems, or with the systems in general, you want to make sure that they have no pockets, because otherwise you won't get heat to your heater cores since they're an auxiliary system. So if you ever had a car in the past, like it wasn't heating right or anything like that, sometimes you can get air pockets in there. Sometimes you can get a little bit of a plugged heater core, and that's usually what that does. Tires.
This is kind of a big, your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So this is kind of a big deal this time of year. Typically what I've always noticed is like, this is the last thing that you remember you need until it snows. It seems like there's like a 50-50 split, or maybe a 60-40 of like, the minute it snows, the phones light up and literally everyone remembers they need tires. On a caveat to that, same thing with wiper blades. I myself am guilty of this too. I never remember I need wiper blades until it rains. And it's like, I need to get them. Told me that 3 times now. But you never remember until you need it, right? The things that I like to say or recommend with tires is kind of knowing what you're getting as well. It's very important in our Minnesota weather or the climate is to think about the tires that are installed on your vehicle, not just solely focusing on price point. But the one thing that I think is new in the market is, at least for our Minnesota market, severe weather rated tires. It's kind of a hybrid tire that they make with different silica compounds to get better traction and stuff in the wintertime. I'm sure everyone's driven a vehicle at times where it slips and slides all the time, and it's really not fun or safe to drive. Those tires and the proper fitment can actually be a big deal for helping you feel comfortable on the road. As far as like itself, checking the tires or the conditions, there's a lot of different variants that you can do with that. Sometimes doing a visual inspection can be key. How the tires are measured are by a tread depth on them themselves. Most new tires are going to come from either 10 to 14, 30 seconds, depending on what kind that is. And that's basically the inch measurement of the actual tread remaining. Legally bald is 230 seconds. So basically what that means is the wear bars on the tire is that you're at the wear bars, right? Typically, as far as a recommendation from our shop, once you start to break underneath the 430 seconds and get into that 330 seconds, that's when it's critical. Not necessarily just for winter, but just for hydroplaning as well. That tire does play a buffer as far as protecting yourself from basically getting into water puddles and then skidding down the road where it's going to be dangerous to drive. Also, too, I guess just on a side note too, the more tread you have, a lot of the times you get more protection from getting things that puncture the tire. So that does play a fact. Flatter, worn tires will play a big issue there.
He's talking 730 seconds, 1130 seconds, 1230 seconds. Little trick that each and every one of you can do to see how much tire tread you have on is take a penny. If you turn it upside down, you got Lincoln's head. You turn it upside down, stand Lincoln on his head. If you can see the top of his head, you need to get new tires. But if the tires are above his head, covering half his face or whatever, then your tires are pretty good yet. But the closer you get to the top of his head, the sooner you need tires. And that was a trick that my grandpa taught me. So there we go. But yeah, that's just something, because we at the shops and they have fancy little gauges that they can put on. It tells them exactly how many 30 seconds of an inch you have of your tires. But the little penny trick works too.
Inflation. So every vehicle kind of runs different tire inflation and stuff like that. They all are mandated to have a door tag sticker, a tire placard is what they're going to call it. So on the vehicles, typically when you open up your driver's door in either the jamb or on that pillar right down there, you'll see a tag that looks almost identical to this. I think federally they have to all be the same.
It's pretty much the same. all the way across the board.
So what that's going to tell you is what tire that vehicle came with. Thing to kind of keep in mind too. Some of the tires will be changed because sometimes customers or vehicle owners might put different sizes on there and stuff like that. But this will tell you the original equipment or fitment that your car came with. And it'll also give you a cold tire pressure fill. Basically what that means is that that's the recommended rating to fit this vehicle's suspension and rating there. That can vary as you drive. I don't know the exact science or the percentage that it varies, but usually you're going to get like a cold fill of like 32 to 34, 35 to 36. After you drive it at a tire pressure like that, let's say 36, for example, after you drive it at 15, 20 miles, that can actually turn into about 40, 41 pounds. I'd say it'd be about accurate. Because as you drive in, that warms up, that'll expand the air and stuff in there. So it builds more pressure. So cold pressures, there's a difference between that and hot pressure. One thing that's really nice and kind of frustrating at the same time, tire pressure sensors are fantastic when they work. When they don't, they are very much not a good thing. You can still go old school and check it that way too if you're in a pinch. But as long as everything's working and functioning, they are very accurate as far as how they assess things and stuff.
And we did put a tire pressure gauge on. It's a little keychain on the table in front of everybody. And if you don't have one, I've got plenty more here that I can give you too if you want, or if you want a second one. But and one thing I want to point out with the tire placard is, like on this one, on the example here, it has 35 pounds both front and rear. You will run across it sometimes where you have different pressures front to back, especially on bigger vehicles, trucks and stuff. They'll do a different, you'll have like 40 in the front and 45 in the rear. So it will change.
Can I ask a question about that? So if like my tire notification comes up on my dashboard, right? So tire pressure, and it's the winter. Would I fill it to the 35 in the winter, or do I need to go lower because as I drive it, it's going to warm up? Does that make sense what I'm asking you?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not going to be detrimental as long as you're getting close. So if the tire thing will come on or the tire light itself comes on, that's usually going to indicate that it's got a certain fluctuation of pressure variance, right? I can't remember it specifically, and everyone's kind of different. The percentages they're on.
A little bit different.
The main thing that I would focus on at that time, if you have one that's running low, is that you get it up to like at least the recommended pressure. Now you can do some rough, just quick math if you've been driving it for a while. Whether it's in the winter or not, they still will rise in pressure as the heat generates, because with the friction of the road and then the vehicle pushing down, and that still does work that way. So hypothetically, let's say if you're at 35 pounds for a recommendation and it went low, bump it up to like 38 and you'll probably be fine. At either point, point in that scenario, at some point in time, you're going to want to at least have someone probably look at it, make sure it doesn't go low. But if you need to get by, that should get you going.
So in the winter, you would bump it up a little bit.
Well, more so, I guess.
Rather than hit that whatever recommended on the money.
It's not going to be very detrimental if you vary it a little bit. Mainly what I was getting at, so if you have a low tire and you bump it up, if you've been driving it, you're just kind of compensating for like a warm tire pressure, So if it's 35 and you go to 38, if you've driven it for a while, you're kind of setting it right in the spec. So if you then stop and let it sit, and then all of a sudden that tire will be 3 pounds low, is because if you go to that level, then it'll lower down, because all that air in there is going to be at the same kind of pressure, that heat temperature rating, which then will still kind of be a little lower. So that's why I recommended it that way.
It's like when it's really, really cold outside, it's the cold, it's like having a balloon in your hand. It robs that air. And then, so today, if it was 45 degrees outside, you might have 35 pounds of pressure. Tomorrow we have a wind chill -10, -15. It might drop it down to 28 and turn on the tire light. You could fill it up to 35, but he's recommending fill it up to 38. So then that way, like when you're driving, it gets cold and it keeps robbing the cold air, or the air from the balloon, like hot, cold. You're fluctuating and compensating for that. So that would be when you can bump it up.
Does nitrogen really make a difference?
Does what?
Nitrogen? It does. Nitrogen doesn't have the characteristics of just compressed air. it doesn't react to hot and cold. It doesn't expand and contract. It's just there. But the key is whoever puts it in, they need to put that tire under a complete vacuum. They got to have all the natural air out of it before they put nitrogen in it. Otherwise, you're just like putting compressed air in it.
I'm not a nitrogen salesman. In my opinion, based on just common real life situations, no. Most of the times at whatever given point, the percentage of actual variance that you're going to gain from getting that is very minimal.
Yeah.
And with our hot and cold scenarios and stuff like that, most of the time it'll be compromised eventually anyway. So it was kind of a big thing probably about 10, 15 years ago.
Yep.
And then it kind of went back away. Long story short, no.
Yeah, there's some shops here in town that just have a tank of nitrogen and they hook it up and, oh, you got a nitrogen boost and hey, I'm going to charge you an extra $20 for giving you nitrogen. I know of one shop in town that has actual nitrogen generator, and it takes over an hour to fill all 4 tires on your vehicle because they hook it up, sucks everything down and puts it out of vacuum and then brings it back up and puts nitrogen in it. He just got that this summer, so I really haven't seen how it's going to work for him for the winter, but he had a fleet of, he had one of his customers was a fleet customer and they wanted nitrogen. And so he went out and bought the $10,000 piece of equipment to do it, and goes, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. So
if you're in a pinch, I guess, because I've ran into this scenario twice in my tenure. If you have a flat tire and you have nitrogen in your tires, it won't hurt anything to throw air in it. I've had a couple scenarios where you get a phone call, I got a flat tire, I have nitrogen, I need a tow. It's like, oh, do you have an air compressor? Because you can fill it up. It's not like the end of the world. So usually the indication for nitrogen on your tires is a green cap. You know, a lot of the places that'll fill it up will have a green cap on your valve stem. But if that's the case, regular air will be just fine.
then we got a deal here, or a screen, just showing you how to use the tire pressure gauge. Just given this one has a gauge, the ones that I gave you guys has a stick, but it's push it on hard, and the stick's going to pop out and it's going to tell you if it's 20, 30, whatever it is. Push it back in, hit it again as you're airing up your tire to see how it works. It's pretty simple. Tire rotation. This is, if you want to get, when Chris sells you some tires and he says you're going to get 60,000 miles out of those tires, and you decide not to rotate them, good luck on getting 60,000 miles out of those tires. So tire rotation.
Yeah, so the recommended rotates kind of vary. But I know my usual recommendation is at least probably every oil change to every other at the most. A lot of times when we do oil changes at our shop, we're going to measure your tires every time, so you get an accurate assessment of both your inner wear, your outer wear, your middle wear. Then you can kind of gauge too, just make sure that everything's going to be good. The more proactive you are with rotates, the better off you are. A lot of the times it's also super beneficial if you get tires from a shop that does your oil changes, then you get free rotates. So at that point, then kind of be as demanding as you need to be to say, hey, I spent a lot of money on these tires because nothing is cheap anymore. Make sure they're getting rotated. It's very key. It's critical. And it's something super simple that can save you big money.
Yeah. And tires, like you said, are not cheap anymore.
No.
Not cheap at all.
I do that every other oil change.
Yeah, so I look at it more of like a mileage basis, and I guess I surely shouldn't just generically say every other oil change. I like to say every 5,000 to 6,000 miles. Sometimes if you're doing a lot of highway miles, you can probably push it a little bit further, just for the fact that, you're not having to stop and go, the cornering and stuff like that. And rule of thumb, usually you'll default to kind of like for getting to know how your vehicle works. So whether it's oil consumption and stuff like that, once you understand how everything kind of wears, if you measure it or have the shop, where you're getting your vehicle serviced, actually keep a close eye on it, you can get a good idea like, hey, I can push it out and we're totally fine on how they're wearing, right? And some vehicles actually wear tires out pretty quick. I've had scenarios throughout my tenure where I've had tires that work absolutely fantastic on 80% of the vehicles. but then I'll put it on a Volkswagen and I'll get 20,000 miles. And then you put a different tire on there and it all of a sudden works fantastic. So there's a lot of different things that go into tires. Throughout the years, I got to learn a lot about it. So I know specific vehicles, fitments, all that stuff that work the best. But yes, 6,000 miles would be my recommendation. I don't know what the industry standard is, but that's just where I set it. What I think, the way I monitored things and how they wear in the shop, it seems to work the best.
Can you go back to your tire rotating picture?
Oh boy.
It's touch
Maybe
screen,
just
you
hit
can
this button.
touch it too.
There we go.
There we go.
So that is every time they're telling you how to change it, so it's different. There's 5 scenarios that you would in theory go through.
Well, every vehicle has a pattern. Like if you have an all-wheel drive, they basically want to keep you left and right the same, just forward, back, moving it that way. It's based on the manufacturer and how their suspensions are designed on how they want you to crisscross. So those 5. Yeah, so it's not
independent vehicles. Not the first time you rotate, you do left. The next time,
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
You go to the different place.
Yeah. No. If you have manufacturer number 1, your tires are going to get rotated like the first one. Manufacturer number 2,
Perfect. That's
fight.
where I was
Yes.
going. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't change it up. That defeats the purpose.
Oh, then going back to tire retorquing too, or torquing of the lug nuts. When you leave, a shop, they always tell you, hey, come back in 50 miles to get your tires retorqued. Definitely do that. A lot of people don't. And I put a lot of miles on. I do outside sales for Napa. I put a lot of miles on the day. And I'll tell you, probably once a month, I see somebody laying on the side of the road, no tire on their vehicle. Because I'm just going to guess that they didn't retorque their vehicles, and with the aluminum wheels expanding and contracting with the heat of the brakes and everything else, those lugs do loosen up over after the initial set. You have to, you come back, get the retorque, you probably are not going to ever have a problem until you take them off again. But after the first torque down, after you get new tires, bring them back to get that retorque done.
A lot of it can change too, how they're seated, how the shop kind of goes through their process of it, but it's a good practice to at least verify it or have them checked. Yeah.
Now we're going to step into batteries. Everybody knows batteries, right? Go out in a cold morning, the car doesn't start. It's a battery, right? There's 2 types of batteries out there that you can get your hands on. One's a flooded battery. That's the old school technology. It's got the battery acid, it's liquid. You drop it and it makes a mess. If it gets overcharged, it'll boil over. It'll have all sorts of fun stuff. But that's the old technology. The new technology is what they call a dry battery, or an AGM, which is absorbed glass mat, or I've even heard it called acid glass mat battery, which is basically the acid is wrapped and absorbed into a fiberglass mat inside of it. So it's very stable, very, if something happens, where the battery gets punctured, whatever, no acid's going to come out. It's just going to stay there. The advantage of the new style AGM is with all these new vehicles, with all the new modules, computers, everything, phone chargers you got hooked up, your DVD players you got hooked up, everything. The AGM actually does prevent, or has a amp hour time that's much, much better. The discharge curve is, those batteries are basically designed to drop down in voltage and get recharged, and they'll take that abuse, as where a flooded battery does not take that abuse as much.
Yeah, a lot of them now, they went from the old school methodology of cold cranking amperage, or cranking amps themselves to more of a reserve capacity. Every battery is going to have a cold cranking amperage or a rating with that. And that's basically like the initial meat and potatoes that'll get your battery, get that initial spurt. With the additional modules and stuff like that on a vehicle, reserve capacity is more of the longevity of your battery, right? And a lot of, I think, the battery industry, from everything I was told from reps and stuff like that lately, they're more of a focus on not necessarily like your super high cold cranking amperage, but more of like your higher reserve capacity. AGM batteries too are more of a stable battery, where they hold up better for vibrations and stuff like that. Whereas a regular, flooded battery, that can be some of the downfall with it.
We have different styles of batteries too in terms of top mount, side mount, and the one pictured is a dual mount, so it can take either or, a top or a side. It's important that you don't do adapters. If you have a friend of yours says, well, I got a battery for your vehicle, and your car takes a side mount, and so then they come to Napa because we do sell the adapters, and you put the adapter on to put, that's a temporary fix to get you going. It's not going to be something that you want to do every day, because the resistance that happens between that adapter to that will get you started, get you on the road, but over time it's going to actually do more harm than good. So make sure that you get the proper top post or side post battery when you're doing a replacement. The other thing, is what they call the BCI group rating or group size. It's a company or a conglomerate that got together, and it's a standardization of battery sizes. So if your car calls for a group 34 or a group 78 or a group 31 or a 27, they all have numbers, and that group means different size battery. So a 78 is, like this, a 34 is like that. So the group size is what's going to fit in that car and designed for that car. There again, you can cheat it on the short term to get you going. If it fits, use it for a little bit, but in the long run, it's probably going to hurt you more than it's going to help you, because it's not going to sit in the spot where it's supposed to. It's going to vibrate around, move around a little bit. Then it touches the side and arcs out and shorts out something. So get the proper group size that you absolutely need.
Yeah, so with that, it does pay to have batteries strapped in. I see it quite a bit as vehicles age, where you throw something in there to kind of get you by. Vibrations and whatnot can cause issues with batteries starting to separate. Essentially, you start to lose the shelf life on the battery. Average lifespan of a battery, I'd say, is about 5 years. My rule of thumb is always about 5 to 7. Some of the older ones, Delco, I know, was really good with it. AC Delco is a GM line. I've seen a lot of them go up to 10 years, but just in general, to kind of be proactive, 5 to 7 is a good rule of thumb. And if you push it too long, especially in Minnesota weather, you're going to find out very quickly that all of a sudden it's bad, right? One kind of fun fact, and I don't know if anyone will have heard this at all in the past or not, but most batteries actually fail in the summertime from excessive heat, vibrations, stuff like that. The vehicle will still start and work fine, but then they'll actually die in the wintertime because they don't have enough internal juice to kind of keep them from freezing. And then usually when they get weak enough and the temperatures drop, that's when they freeze. And that's why you don't have your car won't start and stuff like that. But it's usually something that as you get it tested, you can proactively kind of catch that. So it'll see on a good battery tester, like, hey, this is definitely getting very weak. You can see it. And then you can kind of catch it before you have that emergency call, your car doesn't start, stuff like that.
We touched on this a little bit before with the cold cranking amps and cranking amps. Basically, two differences between the two is one is tested at 0 degrees and one is tested at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually, the bigger number obviously is at the 32 degrees, and but there again, it's the new technologies going towards reserve capacity over cranking amperage, but the cranking amperage is the instant bang that you're going to get for turning your vehicle over. Now we come into my realm, because this is, battery life, and Chris touched on that, about, it used to be, 10, 15 years ago, you could get 7, 8, 10 years out of a battery. Not anymore. It realistically is 3 to 5. And if you're pushing 6 and 7, you're getting good mileage out of your vehicle. But we do have warranties, and to be aware of the warranties. They used to do a whole lot of proration where they'd say 2-year free replacement, and then they'd give you, on year 3, you'd get 45%. So if you bought it, if you bought a a battery at $100, they'd charge you $65 for the new battery, and then you'd have a new battery again, and vice and on and on. Battery manufacturers are going away from that. It's going to be basically a straight across the board 3-year free replacement, and if you make it 3 years after that, you are buying a completely new battery. So, and that's just the way the things are going in life. So, unfortunately. And then once again, we touched on this kind of a little bit earlier with battery safety, that batteries are poisonous. They're extremely dangerous. Handle them with care. You can create a mess, just arcing stuff across. If you drop it and get an acid on yourself, if you've got corrosion, you touch it with your skin, it will irritate your skin. It's just be careful when you're dealing with batteries. Now we're going to
Diagnostics of vehicles. I guess I can touch on this.
Okay.
And I guess the thing that I'd say, just on my experience working the front service counters, this is where most people feel kind of the most embarrassed when they walk into a shop of like, hey, my car does this, this, and this. And then you have to go into like making the noise scenario, right? Or like, and most people get very embarrassed where they're, they want to kind of just like assume that most technicians or shops are going to be like, we'll just kind of briefly tell them what's going on and then we'll let them figure it out because they're professionals. Well, sometimes it takes a little bit more than that. The thing that I'd recommend that you do is kind of you driving your vehicle every day. You understand what sounds it should make, what it should do and all this stuff, where that insight can streamline so much for diagnostics, where even as a professional technician, there's so many different avenues certain things can go down, where if you can pinpoint certain squeaks, rattles, bumps, clunks, feelings of how it's driving,
Yep.
can help to streamline it.
upon acceleration, upon deacceleration, upon braking, cruising at 65 miles an hour, and you can get specific too. Hey, it happens at 72, but it doesn't happen at 70, and then the technician can take it for a test drive, bring it up to 72 miles an hour, and also feel that shudder or whatever and go, okay, I know what we got going on, because he's got a scan tool hooked up and recording data as he's driving and can decipher it and go. So your input, the more input you can give on what you're experiencing when you bring your vehicle in, don't ever feel embarrassed. The more detailed you can be, the better off you're going to be.
I think I've heard a lot of different funny noises, a lot of different explanations. It's comical if we all laugh together, right?
Oh.
What I've actually trained my staff on is like asking the question 3 different times. So if you come in and you say like, hey, my car is doing this, I'm going to probably spin it back to you in a different format to try to get you to tell me again what it's doing. Because by that time, we kind of get a good feeling of like, this is exactly the path where I'm going to instruct everyone to kind of go start with diagnostics, especially again with the cost of everything. So you want to make sure to kind of give all the information you can to streamline where we're going to go with it. The one thing also to remember when you walk in there, as far as not to be embarrassed, you're not the only one that has problems with your vehicle. There's so many scenarios where you walk in and it's just like, we've probably heard it before, or had it explained in a similar fashion where, the more you can be upfront and just say, hey, this is what's going on, or, answer the questions as best you can, it'll help you in that regard.
Malfunction indicator lights, or as we call them in the automotive world, mills, and gauges are, they're your life source as you're driving. You get lights, you see gauges, you see lights, you've got the whole dash in front of you as you're driving along and seeing different things. All those lights have specific meanings, and we're going to kind of go through each individual light and explain it and give you a little bit of a background on what they mean.
What Mark meant to say is they're the most frustrating thing that you're going to see come on in your car. Because the minute it pops on, it's like, this is not the time for it to happen, right?
Right.
There's a lot of different lights and there's a lot of different meanings as far as what that does for your operation of your vehicle. A lot of intimidation factor goes from maybe not truly understanding what each one means and what you can do as far as still operating your vehicle, or when you should actually stop driving it, right? Not all of the lights mean just immediately stop, shut down everything you're doing, call for help, right? It always is good to be educated on what it is, so not to just ignore what they're saying, but to understand what it means.
Yeah.
So
There's only really two scenarios I can think of that you'd shut down, and we'll cover both of those, I believe.
Yep.
With the misfire and the overheat.
Yep.
So your check engine light that comes on, like, that's detecting an issue with the PCM, which is your main computer for your engine. It detects everything it's controlling everything that's going on with your computer at that time. It usually has something to do with emissions or engine performance that's triggered by the different sensors that are on your motor. Is it a dire if it just comes on? No, but you probably should make an appointment here soon, within the next, couple weeks. But do you have to make the emergency phone call, stop what you're doing? Absolutely not.
there's all kinds of scenarios that you're on into with these lights. If you have a trusted shop, and specifically, let's say a scenario I can think of is like if you're out on the road somewhere, a lot of these auto parts stores will check your lights for free. So if you get an engine light that comes on and you have a shop that you really trust back home, at least I get these calls all the time where I have a customer. The example I'll give you is they were down in Florida. Hey, my engine light came on. I don't know what to do. I'm like, all right, go find an O'Reilly's, go find a Napa, or go find a parts store down there. They check your codes.
We do not.
Oh, you don't?
We do not.
Okay.
And-
O'Reilly's
and-
does.
O'Reilly's does. O'Reilly's does. AutoZone does. And the reason that we don't is because we're how do you want to say this? We don't want to lead you wrong. We would much rather say you come in and see us. We'd say, hey, go talk to Chris. He'll point you in the right direction, because at our competitors, they're going to scan your car, and it's going to come up with a P420 code, which is a oxygen sensor.
Catalyst efficiency.
There we go. Yes. Good thing you're here. Anyways, and the different things that could cause that, it's not just an oxygen sensor. They are going to want to, hey, it's an oxygen sensor code. Here you go. Buy the oxygen sensor, put it in, come back. We'll clear your code for you and you'll be good to go. And then you go drive the car for another 8 or 10 ignition cycles, whatever the code gets tripped by. And all of a sudden the code comes back on. You come back to O'Reilly's. Oh, it's a 420 again. Oh, you must have a defective oxygen sensor. Here's another one. Come back and we'll clear the code and do it again. So that could be caused by the catalytic converter. It could be caused because you've got an open injector on your car that's putting too much fuel in. There's so many different things that could cause that code. That's why at Napa, we don't just read codes for you.
And more so what I was getting at with that is more so of a specific scenario where if you're in a pinch or you need to get something to kind of get peace of mind with it. It has helped out a lot. Some of the intimidation factor that I can think of, or what I've heard from different customers that have called in, is when you're out on the road, you don't know where you're going to end up. So a lot of the things that I look at as far as if I was going to be telling friends and family as far as where to go if they're out of town and stuff like that, or if you're local, is creating a relationship with someone or getting a shop that you trust. It is very critical and important. At any given time, as you own a vehicle, you're going to spend money on it. There's just no way around it. Once you have that established relationship or that trust that you create with someone, then you know that you have that confidence level. And it's just like, so once you have that, and then you can call, like, say a said shop of like, hey, I got this code on, can I drive my car? They're going to give you the honest assessment, right? And again, as far as level, not even just like trying to do a commercial for anything that we do specifically, but whoever you feel comfortable with. I mean, ultimately, kind of the proof's in the pudding. You kind of get a good judgment or a feel for how the back and forth banter is, how honest they're going to treat you. A lot that I feel that you can tell is if someone's going to be real enough to say, this is what needs to be fixed, this is what you all have wrong with your car, but you can wait, or giving you that honest shakedown. And it's hard to kind of assess it. Myself, I've never been to another shop, so I can't tell you like what to watch out for. But I always go with it with the fact of the matter that I'm going to treat everyone the same. You kind of get that assessment, as far as how that goes. And you can kind of feel it too, I just say, me just thinking of other service scenarios. But That having a good warranty is huge. So then if something does happen from either workmanship or actual part defect, you do get that covered. I think every auto care comes with 224.
224.
Us and some, if you're a gold member or anything like that, like we have 336. Other shops in this area do also have higher warranties as well. But that also gives you the peace of mind of like, hey, they're professional enough to stand behind their work, and then kind of make sure everything's good there. Reviews can be hard to judge because you might not get a totally honest assessment. I know when reviews first started to come out in the market, I heard so many scenarios where shops would like pay people to do them or have friends of family do them, where you kind of get a watered down view of it. But I guess those would be the things that I'd look at.
Yeah. Well, we're running a little short on time, so I got like 10 or 12 just different lights, and let's go through them quick. This is the one. This one comes on, pull over. If you're overheating, pull over. And call a tow truck, let your vehicle cool off, do what you got to do. But if you have an overheat situation when you're on the road, pull over, because you're going to do more damage the more you drive it. Low fuel, obviously, that's just telling you, hey. But I've had people ask me what that symbol means, so I threw it in there. Here's another one. If your oil pressure, this is oil pressure light comes on, there again, pull over, because you have low pressure. And with the way vehicles are running nowadays, they're so reliable on oil pressure, you're doing damage to your motor. So the faster you shut it off, the quicker you get into the shop by a tow truck at that point in time, the better off you're going to be. This is one that's on some vehicles, not all. Electric power steering light. If you see that, it just means that there's a situation with your electric power steering. You might notice some, stiffness in your power steering or whatever, but that's all that means. That, if you want to strong arm the car and drive it, you can obviously drive it, but suggest to have it come in. TPMS indicators. This is low tire pressure, 99.9% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, or dead battery in your TPMS sensor, or it's not receiving signal anymore. But there again, check tire pressures, keep rolling. This one is kind of it says it's a fault with a powertrain, with your engine, transmission. But I've also seen it where it just means, hey, you're due for an oil change. Wrench comes on, you're due for an oil change. So check your records when you see that light, depending on what it could be. This one here is charging system. Obviously, you have something going on with your battery, your alternator. When that one comes on, most of the time it's going to be your alternator at that point in time that's not giving enough voltage to the battery. Then we have the brake warning light. Most of the time, this is your parking brake is on. And if it is not on, your brake fluid in your master cylinder is a little bit low. We didn't touch on checking that fluid because that is a very minimal one to have checked or need to be checked. And then we have the ABS anti-lock brake. If this one comes on, that just means that there's something going on, whether it's a speed sensor, something with the braking system is going on. Have a check. It's not going to affect your braking. You're still going to be able to brake, but you just will not have your anti-lock brake. You will skid. So, but you will be able to brake.
I will say it is normal to see it if you are braking hard, like slamming your brakes from here or on snow and ice, it will flash for a second.
Yeah, and that's, yes, but that's just telling you it's active. Yep. And then here's this kind of a little thing to go over. If your light flashes at you and goes away, don't really worry about it. It's just like the ABS light flashed at you, went away because you were under hard braking, so the system was telling you it was on. Steady illumination. Hey, it's time to get your car into a technician to take a look at it. If it's flashing rapidly, there's something seriously going on. Even like your check engine light, if that's flashing at you, that means your vehicle is misfiring. So you're doing some sort of damage to the vehicle at that point in time because it's not firing in the right order, or it's not firing at all on one cylinder. But if it's flashing at you, definitely get it in as soon as you possibly can.
To that point, one thing to touch on, if red lights are on, that's usually a good indication to stop or to have at least whatever assessed.
That's true.
Engine light, if it is on, as long as everything feels normal, you usually have time to drive and get where you need to be. Flashing engine lights are serious. That's the misfire situation where then you're not burning your gas properly and you can cause scoring. But just so that doesn't get confusing.
Yeah, color coded. Yeah,
Red lights are a concern. So a battery light, oil light, alternator, stuff like that, that can basically it can be a bad time, right?
Yep. Yeah, you're right, because the oil pressure light is red, engine light is yellow, ABS is yellow, brakes are yellow. So red and yellow. Good call.
That's my favorite part of the deal. Does anyone have questions? Briefly, I guess we don't have a lot of time. So
we had so much fun up here talking tonight. I mean, thank you for having us. We obviously had a good time up here.